Improbably, this LGBT singing choir has demonstrated how women are investing in tradition to create change, like alchemists turning discord into harmony. Their repertoire includes the Croatian national anthem, a Bosnian love song, and Serbian duets. And Leah adds with a grin, Kavita, we especially are proud of our Christmas music because it shows we are open to religious practices, even though Catholic Church hates us LGBT. Their concerts draw from their own communities, yes, but also from an older generation, a generation that might be suspicious of homosexuality, but is nostalgic for its own music and the past it represents. One father who had initially balked at his daughter coming out in such a choir now writes songs for them. In the Middle Ages, troubadours would travel across the land, singing their tales and sharing their verses. Les Boer travels through the Balkans like this, singing, connecting people divided by religion, nationality, and language. Bosnians, Croats, and Serbs find a rare shared space of pride in their history. And Les Boer reminds them that the songs one group often claims as theirs alone really belong to them all. Yesterday, Malika and Usha showed us that music can create a world more accepting of difference than the one we have been given. The world Lema Bowie was given was a world at war. Liberia had been torn apart by civil strife for decades. Lema was not an activist. She was a mother of 3, but she was sick with worry. She worried her son would be abducted and taken off to be a child soldier. She worried her daughters would be raped. She worried for their lives. One night she had a dream. She dreamt she and thousands of other women ended the bloodshed. The next morning at church, she asked others how they felt. They were all tired of the fighting. We need peace, and we need our leaders to know we will not rest until there is peace. Among Lema's friends was a policewoman who was Muslim. She promised to raise the issue with her community. At the next Friday's sermon, the women who were sitting in the side room of the mosque began to share their distress at the state of affairs. What does it matter, they said. A bullet doesn't distinguish between a Muslim and a Christian. This small group of women determined to bring an end to the war, and they chose to use their traditions to make a point. Liberian women usually wear lots of jewelry and colorful clothing. But no, for the protest, they dressed all in white. No makeup. As Lema said, we wore the white, saying we were out for peace. They stood on the side of the road on which Charles Taylor's motorcade passed every day. They stood for weeks. First just 10, then 20, then 50, then hundreds of women wearing white, singing, dancing, saying they were out for peace. Eventually, opposing forces in Liberia were pushed to hold peace talks in Ghana. The peace talks dragged on and on and on. Lema and her sisters had had enough. With their remaining funds, they took a small group of women down to the venue of the peace talks and they surrounded the building. In a now famous CNN clip, you can see them sitting on the ground, their arms linked. We know this in India. It's called a gherav. Then things get tense. The police are called in to physically remove the women. As the senior officer approaches with a baton, Lema stands up with deliberation, reaches her arms up over her head, and begins very slowly to untie her headdress that covers her hair. You can see the policeman's face. He looks embarrassed, he backs away, and the next thing you know, the police have disappeared. Lema said to me later, it's a taboo, you know, in West Africa. If an older woman undresses in front of a man because she wants to, the man's family is cursed. She said, I don't know if he did it because he believed, but he knew we were not going to leave. We were not going to leave till the peace accord was signed. And the peace accord was signed. And the women of Liberia then mobilized in support of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, a woman who broke a few taboos herself, becoming the first elected woman head of state in Africa in years. When she made her presidential address, she acknowledged these brave women of Liberia who allowed her to win against a football star. That's soccer for you Americans, no less. Women like Sakina and Leah and Lema have humbled me and changed me and made me realize that I should not be so quick to jump to assumptions of any kind. They've also saved me from my righteous anger by offering insights into this third way. A Filipina activist once said to me, "How do you cook a rice cake? With heat from the bottom and heat from the top." The protests, the marches, the uncompromising position that women's rights are human rights, full stop, that's the heat from the bottom. That's Malcolm X and the suffragists and gay pride parades. But we also need the heat from the top. And in most parts of the world, that top is still controlled by men. So to paraphrase Marx, women make change, but not in circumstances of their own choosing. They have to negotiate. They have to subvert tradition that once silenced them in order to give voice to new aspirations. And they need allies from their communities. Allies like the imam, allies like the father who now writes songs for a lesbian group in Croatia, allies like the policeman who honored a taboo and backed away, allies like my father, who couldn't help his sister but has helped 3 daughters pursue their dreams. Maybe this is because feminism, unlike almost every other social movement, is not a struggle against a distinct oppressor. It's not the ruling class or the occupiers or the colonizers. It's against a deeply held set of beliefs and assumptions that we women far too often hold ourselves. And perhaps this is the ultimate gift of feminism, that the personal is in fact the political. So that, as Eleanor Roosevelt said once of human rights, the same is true of gender equality, that it starts in small places, close to home, on the streets, yes, but also in negotiations at the kitchen table, and in the marital bed, and in relationships between lovers and parents and sisters and friends. And then you realize that by integrating aspects of tradition and community into their struggles, women like Sakina and Leah and Lema, but also women like Sonia Gandhi here in India and Michelle Bachelet in Chile and Shirin Ebadi in Iran, are doing something else. They're challenging the very notion of Western models of development. They are saying, we don't have to be like you to make change. We can wear a sari or a hijab or pants or a bubu, and we can be party leaders and presidents and human rights lawyers. We can use our tradition to navigate change. We can demilitarize societies and pour resources instead into reservoirs of genuine security. It is in these little stories, these individual stories, that I see a radical epic being written by women around the world. It is in these threads that are being woven into a resilient fabric that will sustain communities that I find hope. And if my heart is singing, it's because in these little fragments, every now and again, you catch a glimpse of a whole new world, and she is definitely on her way. Thank you.